You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And today we are looking at dedicating the show to one issue: the House of Parliament and the 2022 budget. Is the budget now approved matter ended? What happens to the e-levy and the demands of the minority? But how does this House purge itself of the dishonor and dishonorable things that have happened in the quote-unquote august and honorable House of Honorables? My guest this morning, and you have been asking, where is he? Where is he? Okay, so sometimes you guys forget that Kwekubaku takes his break on Newsfile just when lawyers are also going on their vacation. Yes, I agree that he should have been back a long while because lawyers resumed a while ago. So Abdul Malik Kwekubaku, editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper, and right in front of him, parliamentary documents, parliamentary debates, standing orders, among others. You certainly must get ready to enjoy it. Senior, welcome back.
Thank you, my brother.
Thank you very much.
Good to be back.
Thank you.
I missed the program.
Sure.
But I was watching quite often and
That's
very
right.
educative and very solid.
And I enjoyed the rare artillery supports that you continue to give me when I sit here. Right. And except that you give me a lot of trouble. When you are not on, the people who keep asking me, and some actually come attacking me. All right. So also here in the studio is Alexander Kwamina Afenyoma-King. He is MP Efutu and Deputy Majority Leader of the Parliament of Ghana. We always say the August House. Good morning and welcome.
Oh, sir.
Great. You guys have been up to a lot of schemes, and Shakespeare will say stratagems, and doing what you clearly understand from your point of view is outsmarting the NDC on the issue of quorum and the number of votes required to pass a budget that allegedly or supposedly was rejected. Well, joining us via Zoom, Samuel Nete George, MP Ningo Pram Pram, and he has been loud on these issues in Parliament as well, insisting that the e-levy must go. Good morning and welcome, Samuel George.
Good morning, Samson, and good morning to our co-panelists and our viewers.
Right.
It's a pleasure to be on.
Good morning to Kofi Bento, lawyer and senior vice president, Imani Africa, and Dr. Andrew A.J. Holmes, economist and research fellow. He has a complete view of the budget and will share some portions with us, including what the minority is demanding over the e-levy. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you. And good morning, everyone.
Good to have you. Good to have you. Okay, so let's do a quick tour of Parliament and see what happened in the last 2 weeks, Friday and then Tuesday. Let's try and give you a brief recap, and we have put it very nicely in these slides. So follow me as I take you through these slides about what happened in Parliament. So it was about the budget approval, the 2022 budget approval. Parliament on Tuesday approved the 2022 budget statement and economic policy. But that was before, yes, the Friday before that budget had been rejected, if you like. There were 137 members who did the rejection of that budget, and the majority boycotted Parliament on that night. Then, on Tuesday, you had 138 members, including the Speaker, and that's the controversial matter, also rescinding the rejection and approving the budgets. In this situation, the minority boycotted Parliament. They didn't show up at all. Both sides have described each other's actions as unconstitutional. So who do we believe? Who do we take? Article 102 of the Constitution says that a quorum of Parliament, apart from the person presiding, shall be 1/3 of all members of Parliament, and that is 92 of all the 275 members being present. But that was not the big issue here. The big issue was about Article 104. 104.1 says, except as otherwise provided in this Constitution, matters in Parliament shall be determined by the votes of the majority of members present and voting, with at least half of the members of Parliament present. Getting the half became the issue. According to the majority, on Friday, there was not half. But the majority says on Tuesday, there was half, because the Deputy Speaker who presided, Joe Osei-Usu, is a member of Parliament and could count himself as such. So he made up to get 138, but he didn't vote. The Speaker shall have neither an original nor casting vote, according to Article 104, Clause 2. Article 112 says, 112 Clause 2 says, a member may call for head count or division if the opinion of the Speaker on the voice vote is challenged. A member may vote in a division even if he did not hear the question put. A member is not obliged to vote. And guess what? Afenyo Marking, sitting right here with us, called for a division on the Friday situation. And that meant that the voice vote was not going to count, but the people needed to be counted and named. Order 108 of the Standing Orders of Parliament says no question for decision in the House shall be proposed for determination unless there are present in the House not less than 1/2 of all the members of the House. And except otherwise provided in the Constitution, the question proposed shall be determined by the majority of votes of the members present and voting. These are the legal issues coming up. The Speaker shall have neither an original nor casting vote. And if upon any question before the House, the votes are equally divided, the motion shall be taken to be lost. This is where the minority NDC has come under some flack, that if they had stayed in the House rather than boycott, they were 100, they could have marshaled their numbers of 137 against the NPP's 137, and then there would have been a tie. Once there's a tie, the vote is lost. But the NDC insists that they knew that in the circumstances, the Deputy Speaker would have been made to vote, as it were. But is that true? The order 3, sub 3 says a Deputy Speaker or any other member presiding shall not retain his original vote while presiding. Original vote. So you read the emphasis there. So the NDC outlined 5 things that it wanted attention to, without which it was not going to be part of this process and will not approve the budget. 1, withdrawal of the Ejapa deal. You know, the Ejapa deal is back. They want it withdrawn. Then 2, they want a suspension of the e-levy. 3, reconstruct paragraph 829 of the Acre Energy transaction, so to speak. Well, it looks like there's some concession on that. 4, review the benchmark value for import, and 5, make provisions for the Keta tidal wave disaster. It does appear that has also been catered for. Minorities' entrenched position, even after further talks with the majority. E-levy bringing us to a stalemate. Because there were some concessions, it appears the e-levy is what they could not agree on. So what does the minority want? As I mentioned to you, reduce the rate to a lower rate. They have issued a statement. What is the content of that? Do they want a reduction or is an outright rejection? Haruna Idrisu is reported, actually heard speaking at a forum, saying that he was amenable to 1% instead of the 1.75. Well, there's a statement that says that's not his position, and that's not the position of the minority caucus. Increase Ghana cedis 100 threshold to a higher amount. He's said to have suggested, he's heard to suggest that it should go to 300. The budget has been approved. Now what? All right, so let me begin with Kofi Bento. Kofi?
Yes.
Yeah, so I've taken you through a bit of a reminder of what has gone on. What will be your preliminary comments before we dive into the deep?
So my preliminary comment will be that much as there seems to be quite a lot of chaos, and we are not happy with the kind of undecorous, dishonorable behavior we see in Parliament, we need to bear in mind that this is not a bad thing. It is not a bad thing for Parliament to scrutinize and hold the executive to account. And the ultimate test of holding somebody to account is to look in the person's face and say no. In our history, we've had this happen once, and we took the wrong view. And the wrong view was that we should connect Parliament to the executive so that these things don't happen. I am one of the people who believe that we should stop connecting Parliament to the executive and have a Parliament which is purely about legislation and oversight, and make sure that our Parliament is capable and actually acts to be a check on the executive. Failure to do that creates a lot of problems. So my preliminary view is that there's a lot we can say, but we should not lose fact of the fact that this is Parliament at its best, doing its job and making sure that it holds the executive to account and forces them to do things right. This is also the answer to those who complain about a winner takes all. When you have a situation like this where the minority effectively is going to have a say and determine somehow what happens, in the executive's budget, then you cannot claim that you have a winner takes all. So I'd like us to keep in mind that this is not a bad thing, and indeed we should improve on it.
Minority will always have their say. The bigger issue is that they always don't have their way. So why are you happy that they can have a say? Just a say?
No, I'm saying this is an example of where the minority can have more than a say. Because indeed, when you have a situation like this, and if we had Parliament acting like this with this kind of power, then you have a situation where you don't have a winner takes all, you don't have a minority which just has its say, but the minority can stop the budget, can force changes in the budget, and can force the executive to go in a certain direction which they otherwise would not go to. So this is really a good thing. This is the purpose of Parliament. And I'm one of the people who believe that we should stop taking ministers from Parliament. If we amend our constitution, that's the first thing to amend. So you have a Parliament where people go in and stay in Parliament, and they act as professional parliamentarians representing their people and be a check on the government with no intention to go into the executive. So I am looking at the bigger picture and saying this is what Parliament is for. If we can take out the dishonorable conduct and undecorous conduct, this is how this republic should be run. And we are all better off if this becomes a norm.
So it's a preliminary, but how do you describe circumstance that gives Ghana such a bad image internationally, even locally? A parliament that is held up so high, particularly within the continent. And we know how our parliament has been influential in the sub-regional parliament and even the continental, body. How do you say this is the best thing to be happy about?
I didn't say everything is to be happy about. So I said we need to take out the undecorous conduct. We need to take out basically the hooliganism. And please, there are crimes being committed in Parliament. This thing happened, some years back. I said, when people commit assault in Parliament, when people commit crimes in Parliament, Samson, you remember we had this discussion. Take serious view of these things because we are all watching. And like you're saying, the whole world is watching Ghana. So look, we cannot lump everything together and say it's all good or it's all bad. What I'm saying is that everything we are seeing happening in Parliament is not necessarily bad. What is bad is the illegal, undecorous, dishonorable conduct. And when those things happen, it is in the interest of Parliament and in the interest of the rest of us that Parliament stops and takes care of those people. There are too many people with a tendency to be hooligans, in Parliament when things deteriorate. And I think Parliament must stop because it affects all of us.
All right. Now, Kweku, you have followed this house for a long time. Times when we are not too sure about something that happened, you're one of the first to give us the Hansard, the official, record of the house to try and clarify issues. What will be your general view of what has happened?
Well, let me be very honest with you. As a student of parliamentary history, and indeed, Parliament is my favorite branch of government. I just love Parliament, I'm biased towards the legislature. I am not excited with what I've been seeing. Look, we were all hoping that the chaos of 7th January, was it, or 6th January, midnight 2021, that, inexplicable behavior or misbehavior of members of Parliament, particularly the gentleman who snatched ballot papers. And then, of course, some of the seniors too were kicking ballot boxes and all sorts of things, which resulted in the military.
We understand there was actually an attempt to take the mace.
Yes, and which resulted in the uncalled for military invasion, which we all condemned. I was hoping that perhaps that...
And the mace I mentioned is very important.
If you know
it's
parliamentary...
the status, it's a symbol of authority of the House.
Exactly. So it's not good. Look, the institutional integrity, the corporate integrity of the House of Parliament is at the brink. I'm not going to mince words on that. Okay? We've had one or two instances before. If you recall the Abacha incident, the two Achampons, a minister of agriculture and a member of parliament. There was a near clash which resulted in a walkout because the speaker said he hadn't seen what happened. But that even was on a lower scale. What happened 6th January and what happened recently, it's unpardonable. Completely unpardonable. I know where Kofi is coming from and I'll get there. But I think he also conceded that what he called hooliganism, legislative hooliganism, if you like, completely unacceptable. It affects Parliament itself, its moral authority, its legislative authority, and Ghana's international image. Don't go dragging the speaker's chair and then come back and tell us that you were preserving it. Ridiculous. So, to be honest with you, it's a bad sign. And one cannot be happy as a Ghanaian. It ought not to happen. But of course, that's where Kofi is coming from. That you can say... This
January 6th and now.
Yes.
A desecration of this House?
Exactly. It's not in dispute. Members of Parliament ought not to behave that way. They just don't have the luxury of an alternative. They're supposed to be honorable members of Parliament. Sometimes we all sit on radio and we call them honorables. We are not supposed to even to call them so in terms of the use of the title in the rare sense of the word. They have to use it in the House. But we've all extended it and we are using it because of a certain level of respect that we have for the House and the members of the House. When you behave this way, it's unacceptable. It's condemnable. But you see, it's gone beyond that, and perhaps has brought some issues that need some mischief that needs to be cured. And I think that's where Kofi is coming from. But you see, let me be honest with you. Kofi's point about the balance of the House and how it will help the House. Look, ordinarily, if the majority had the full complement of the anonymous, the day Speaker Bagman was in the chair, they would have passed the budget. But they didn't have their full complement of the anonymous, so they misbehaved by citing Asiedun Ketia's presence in the gallery. Completely, I nearly said nonsensical. It's unsustainable. The reason the majority, and I'm happy my brother is here, is my brother-in-law, though.
Oh, okay.
Yes. The truth of the matter is that Asiedun Ketia's presence at the gallery was of no moment, no consequence. It could not be compared to ministers in the chamber. But I suspect, because they realized they didn't have the full complement of their numbers, they chose that route.
Strategy.
Yes, but it is not, you don't say that. You are telling me that the reason why you walked out was because Asiedun Ketia was in the gallery. It's not sustainable.
Politics. That is strategy.
Yeah, but it is politics without integrity. Then don't argue that way. Find some other credible reasons to give. But if you advance the point of Asiedun Ketia's presence in the gallery being the basis for your walkout, it cannot be sustained in parliamentary terms. That's the point I'm making.
They will say, as lawyers, that when the law favors you, bank on the law in courts. When the facts favor you, bank on the facts. But when none favors you, bank on the table. You make noise.
Yes, that's
and so the strategy.
It's irresponsible strategy. It's a wrong-headed strategy. In my candid opinion, look, going into the future, when we are writing books or we are doing research and things, it's not sustainable that because of the presence of a general secretary at the public gallery, you walked out. No, you can't. That's not the basis at all. Okay. The minority leadership too, of course, you've alluded to it. The fact that they also stayed away, I can't get this. Is that also a strategy? Because you see, you just were right. If they had been there, it would have been stalemate.
Well, a part of the debate suggests they had a misreading, in a misinterpretation of the Constitution, and staying out, they thought, was the effective way to stop what was going on.
Bad strategy.
Only for it to turn out that that was such a bad strategy. That's the other part of the debate. Now, let me talk to the MPs who are with us now. And Doc, hold on for us. So let's go to the Honorable Member for Ningo Pram Pram. Justice Sophia Kufu says that's the best way to call them honorables. Instead of saying honorable somebody, say Samuel George Nete, the Honorable Member for Ningo Pram Pram, says that's the correct way to say it. Okay.
Well, I'm surprised because the word honorable ought not to be used by us when we're talking about
it. They represent us. So, what do you make of the public's reaction to what happened in the House? We're just watching some footage, and I can see Muntaka almost hitting his people to restrain them because he has no other option. He can't use words to restrain them. He's had to sort of hit and push them to restrain them. What do you make of the public reaction, and what will be your preliminary overview of what has happened so far?
Well, thank you very much. I believe that there's been public outcry, and rightly so, at the happenings in Parliament from last Friday. On the back of what happened on the night of the 6th and 7th of January, we would have hoped that what came to a head on Wednesday in Parliament this past Wednesday would not have happened again. Unfortunately, we find ourselves there. And as a member of Parliament, I can only take full responsibility and say that we hold our hands up and say we are work in progress. This shouldn't happen. It's happened. We apologize for it and move on. to try and see how to avoid it. In fact, it is towards that end that you realize what the business for the House was on Thursday. That on Thursday, the Speaker, the Second Deputy Speaker, Right Honorable Andre Siama, walked in to the chamber and basically just did the prayer and adjourned the House till Tuesday. Because we decided that, look, we cannot continue having the scenes that played out. Now, the scenes that played out in the House on Wednesday were as a result of disagreement on procedure and happenings in the House. If those issues are not ironed out properly before we get into the chamber, you'll continue to see such scenes repeat themselves on the floor. And so the best way to save the image of Parliament and the image of members of Parliament would be for us to have that process where no public business will be conducted in the House. We'll come, say the prayer, and adjourn the House until the leadership of the House is able to address it. So you realize that Parliament on its own has started some work towards bringing sanity on the floor of the House. I'm sure that the media has reported a certain committee of 20. People have misconstrued it to be a committee that is working to resolve the impasse on the budget. No. That committee's work was to bring decorum onto the floor of the House. 10 from the NDC, 10 from the MPP. We had no mandate whatsoever to discuss issues of the budget. Our mandate was solely to discuss the unruly scenes that we saw in the chamber on Wednesday. And one of the things that meeting on Wednesday that ran late into the night panned out was how the House should proceed on Thursday. And one of the key things we've all agreed on is that never again should any member from any side of the House cross the aisle or move towards the maze or cross the aisle. You can voice your disagreement in your chair where you sit. You're free to do your gesticulation, but that movement towards a physical confrontation, we vowed not to have it happen again. And so once again, I would just express the apology of the minority, and I believe that to a large extent the majority as well, in saying that this should not happen again. However, on the issues that have happened in Parliament, I believe that it's important to put them in perspective. On Friday, the budget policy statement the debate on it was concluded by the Honourable Minority Leader and the Honourable Majority Leader. And after that, the Finance Minister made a prayer to the House for further time to engage. The Speaker is not versed with the power to take a ruling on such a matter. Someone says they want to engage another group of persons. You need to find out if there's consensus on that, whether engagement can happen. The minority held the view that the Finance Minister had not shown good faith in his actions, in that we've been debating since Tuesday. He had never shown up in Parliament. When the question was about to be put at the last minute, the dying embers of the whole process, then you show up and say you want more time to engage. Where have you been since Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and even earlier in the day on Friday? We thought that it was not fair. It didn't show good faith. And so we said, well, we would want to complete the processes we had started, the processes that he had stayed away from. When we complete those processes, we could go back to have whatever engagement it is with him. In fact, my understanding is that when the Speaker allowed for the prayer to be done, the Finance Minister had agreed in a prior meeting with leadership and the Speaker to come and itemize what issues he wanted to engage the minority on. However, he failed to do that. I mean, on the record, in that meeting, he agreed on the 5 issues he was going to come and tell the whole country and the world he was coming to engage us on. But on the record in Parliament, again, another sign of bad faith, he failed to mention exactly what he wanted to engage. When you come out and just say you want time to engage members of the minority, given the climate in which we sit in, it would be unwise for any member of the minority to publicly accept an engagement that has no terms and conditions publicly stated, and to suggest that some kind of backroom maneuvering was going to happen. And so we're not going to be obliged to do that. The Speaker put the question. Now, when the Speaker put the question, a vote was had, and that vote proceeded along the lines of standing on the 109 of the House, where the Speaker put the voice vote, and in the opinion of the one presiding, the nays had it. In this case, the nays were the NDCs are. And now this question was simple. Do you want, the Finance Minister is praying for time to meet with you. are you willing to meet with him? We said, no, we're not willing to meet with him. Let's proceed with the business of the House. The next business of the House was for the Speaker to put the question on the motion on the budget policy document. Now, the process of voting had commenced. At this time, let's put on record, per the Hansard that we have seen on Tuesday this week, there were 274 members of parliament in the House. So the fundamental question of at least one half of members of parliament, which would be 138, or 137.5, rounding it up, 138, there was that was met. You had 274 members of the House, with the exception of the Honourable Adra Safo. And so 274 members, we met that procedure, that criteria. A vote was put, a voice vote was put, the nays had it. Then the deputy majority leader, rightly so, challenged the ruling of the Speaker. Again, that was within his right to challenge the order of Mr. Speaker, the ruling of Mr. Speaker. And he had two routes to go. He could have asked for a head count, or he could have asked for a vote by division. The deputy majority leader expressly asked for a vote by division. Now, the processes for a vote by division are again spelled out in our standing orders, in Standing Order 113. Now, when that, and 113 says a member may call for head count or division if the opinion of Mr. Speaker on the voice vote is challenged. Now, in the case of a head count, and this is 1133, Mr. Speaker shall take the vote of the House by calling upon members who support or oppose his decision successively to rise in their places. A member may vote in a division even if he did not hear the question put, or a member is not obliged to vote. But that's not the route that the Honourable Afenyo-Markin asked the Speaker or prayed the Speaker to take. He asked the Speaker to do the procedure in 114. Now, 114 would be that the Speaker would have to put yet another voice vote. Now, the question here is, you had visitors to Parliament, in this case, 4 ministers of state. The Minister of State for Finance, Charles Edubuahin, the Minister for Finance himself, Kenneth Furiata. You had the Minister for Transport, Honourable Esiama, and then I think you had the Minister for Water Resources and Sanitation, Honourable Cecilia Dapa, in the chamber at the time. Now, this was a voice vote. How, if you're challenging the authenticity of a voice vote and you have persons on the floor who could, I in no way intend to impugn their integrity, who could join a chorus of ayes or nays, whichever ways they chose to vote, whilst they were in the chamber, but did not have the right to vote by our standing orders, the right thing to do would be to ask them to excuse the chamber and have the only members who are allowed to vote take the vote. And that's what Mr. Speaker did. It didn't go down well. Again, people have said Mr. Speaker called in the marshals on the ministers. That's not correct. The Hansards will bear us out. Mr. Speaker indicated that failure to comply with his decision, one avenue open to him was to call in the marshals. At this point, the ministers excused themselves. Then we saw the rancor that started from the backbench of the majority caucus against the Honourable Asedu Nketia, who was sitting in the gallery. Interestingly, he wasn't the only one in the gallery. The press gallery was full. The public gallery was also had quite a number of people. At least over 30 people were in the gallery. However, it was only Asedu Nketia who was being singled out. Now, clearing the rules on division in 114 do not speak about the public gallery, and so it was neither here nor there. And Mr. Speaker kept asking them to speak into the microphone and make a formal application to him. Well, that didn't happen. We saw a first-timer in the House, Honourable Davis Ansah Opoku, MP for Mpareso, order the majority out of the chamber. And we saw the entire majority caucus, including their leadership, follow his leading and storm out of the chamber. Now, in storming out of the chamber, a vote process had commenced and an additional process had been triggered by the deputy majority leader. The fact that they walked out of the process that they themselves triggered did not mean that that process will come to an end. And so the process did continue. Now, people are raising questions as to whether we had the required numbers to have that vote. That's neither here nor there. The process of voting had commenced. Then if we want to take that logic, it will be impossible for Parliament to conduct any business. Because then, at any point in time, you will walk out and then there has to be a quorum decision taking again. It's just like every regular meeting. If the quorum for a meeting is 7 people, and you have 7 people and start the meeting, and you need to take a decision during the meeting, and one person has gone to ease himself, you do not say that you no longer have quorum, and so you cannot take decisions in that meeting. Once you met quorum at the beginning of the meeting, you will proceed. Once quorum was met at the beginning of the voting process will continue. And so the speaker puts the voice vote. Again, it put the voice vote, which was the first phase of the process of division. Put the voice vote. The ayes had it because there was nobody to say nay, but the speaker didn't end there. The speaker then proceeded to ask two of the clerks at table each to record the count, because for a vote by division, after the second voice vote, you have to have a head count. That's what 114 of our standing order says. So the speaker continued with the procedure and had that head count. That head count saw 137 voting against the prayer of the minister. Now, once that was done, it means that the vote by division that had been called by the Honorable Afenyo-Markin had been lost. The speaker then proceeded with the business of the House, which was to put a question on the budget statement. Do not forget that that was what we were about to start before the finance minister approached us with his prayer. Again, I maintain that the voting sequence and processes had started. And so we had met all the threshold requirements, either in Article 104 of the Constitution or the standing orders of Parliament, that we had met the base requirement and proceeded, and the speaker put the question, the vote was lost. Like Mr. Kwekubaku put rightly, yes, the majority walked out because they knew they would lose that vote. They didn't have the numbers. Fast forward to Tuesday. The minority also chose not to go in. You've given an interpretation of why you think we didn't go in. We were minded about what we had gathered as our own intelligence, and politics is about intelligence, of the proceedings of the House that day. And if you look at what happened on Wednesday, we were justified to take that decision on Tuesday. And that position was that the first deputy speaker would put a question, and when the voice vote showed that, which is at his discretion, he will rule in favor of the majority side. And if we chose to challenge him to a head count, he wouldn't have obliged us. And that's what happened on Wednesday. On Wednesday, and that's why we decided not to go into the House. On Wednesday, when the motion for rescission was moved by the Honorable Minority Leader and was seconded by the Honorable Mahama Ayariga, member for Bo. When the motion was moved and seconded, he allowed debates to happen. Now, once you accept a motion, it is seconded and debates happen. It is not for the speaker to rule. Our standing orders say the next thing the speaker must do is put a question. But what did the Honorable Joseph Osei do? He chose to give a ruling without putting a vote. It is that we anticipated on Wednesday and said we would not go and sit in there for them to have the required numbers to meet the threshold of 138. And then when you want to trigger the opportunity for a 137 vote, which many people have said would have been the case, which could only be triggered upon an application to the speaker, the one presiding, for a head count, which he could choose to decline. We would not have given him that opportunity. And that's why we hold till today that the vote that happened on Tuesday was an illegality, because with the one presiding, he could not have been counted for quorum. Because there are two things that fundamentally are the primary benefits of being a member of Parliament. One is to take part in debates, and the second is to vote.
Okay.
The standing orders of Parliament says anyone who sits in the chair cannot take part in debates. Anyone who sits in the chair cannot vote. So if you cannot take part in debates and you cannot vote when you sit in the chair, how can you be counted for quorum? I mean, that's going to be wanting to approbate and reprobate. I rest here because I see that you want to stop me at this point in time.
Thank you very much. Actually, I called for a certain summary, view, but the way you have done it is also okay. So we'll hear from Afenyo-Markin, and then we will hear also from my other guests, and then we will zoom into the specific legal questions that require redress and try and see if we have a resolution of them. And the final lap will be to discuss where we go from here. Because Parliament, you have recognized this by yourselves, that you need to form a committee of 20 to try and sit down and agree on a number of things, because the minority has said and is sworn that from this time going forward, you are going to ensure that every decision is by a vote. That shows that it's not going to be easy in the House. Right, so, Zafia,
sir.
Yes,
all right.
What happened?
So, Leonard, thank you for the opportunity, and good morning to the audience out there. Last week, Friday in the morning, Mr. Speaker called leadership into a meeting. And as part of the meeting, we received a guest, Dr. K.Y. Amakon of ACA, and he set up an advocacy group on this good governance. And we listened to him. We had the deliberations on that. Soon thereafter, Mr. Speaker engaged us on the way forward for the day, that we needed to build consensus and do what was right. Then the NDC backbenchers, I don't want to mention the names, about 7 of them came to intrude, obstruct, disrupt, and stop the meeting. They came in verbally abusing their leadership and Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker then asked their chief whip to move out and tame them. I also moved out and spoke to some of them. They left. So we eventually sought the permission of Mr. Speaker to have our caucus meeting, because in the morning we were supposed to have our caucus meeting, and Speaker's meeting stopped us from having our caucus meeting. So we sought permission for 30 minutes to do it, which he obliged us. Later in the day, the Minister of Finance had come, and there was supposed to be a meeting at the Speaker's lobby. And when they were having a meeting, I think it happened at the Speaker's office eventually. I had been assigned to some other thing. But I'm told by the majority leader, and later the minority chief whip himself confirmed, that another group of NDC backbenchers walked into the Speaker's office and disrupted the meeting, that they won't allow the meeting to go on and that they want sitting to commence. So they stopped that meeting of engagement. In that meeting, the finance minister told their leadership that he wanted to meet both caucus. But the NDC leadership intimated that there was some mistrust from the backbench. So they would prefer extended leadership meeting. When we say extended leadership, you're talking about the 5 plus the ranking, or the 5 plus the chairs. So the minister was ready to meet the ranking of their side. Again, they said no. So we were in Mr. Speaker's office to, normally before he comes in to sit, we have to discuss the approach. Then out of the blue, Mr. Speaker said some of the backbenchers have reported the deliberations to Kevin Taylor, and Kevin Taylor was insulting him. So as for him, he wouldn't give in to any further discussion. So Mr. Speaker, all of a sudden, lost control. We had in mind not to take the vote that day, and same had been communicated. People should sometimes be sincere, not to suddenly make U-turn and pretend. The NDC, were all ready to do what they wanted to do. Anyway, fast forward, we were not happy with the way Mr. Speaker spoke to our ministers, and that he would call the marshal and all that. Yes, Angry Kweku had called me privately to disagree with our position. And, he's made it clear that this is the position he has on this matter. Well, that is his view. But we felt that Mr. Aseedun Ketia is a member of the Parliamentary Service Board. You are a board member. What is your business in coming to sit at the gallery and giving directions and all that? So if our ministers are supposed to leave, then we also said that they should also leave. After all, you are a member of the board. What are you coming to do there? You are not just a general secretary. Do we always find board members coming to sit in the at the public gallery and all that? So we left because we realized that Mr. Speaker's approach was not being fair. We left. Now, on Tuesday, we came to do business, but prior to the meeting, we had met. The NDC brought its team, we brought our team, and then we sat together almost 4 hours. They came, they had a prepared proposal. They brought them, they read them out, we discussed the K2 South situation, that's the Blekuso phase 2. We readily agreed. Other proposals, we said no problem. Then it got to the e-levy, where they were ready for 1%, and then it got to the threshold. They said, okay, they will review their position to 300 Ghana cedi, and along the line, some of them were saying, okay, we can oblige you 200 Ghana cedi. It was inconclusive. In the end, we all agreed, and this is where I demand of them their utmost sincerity, that what happened on Friday was an illegality. But they were concerned about a safe landing, how to protect Mr. Speaker. So we're debating on this, how should we approach it? That was their concern, that okay, they don't want to see Mr. Speaker naked. And we said, okay. Eventually, we decided that, okay, let's leave the matter to the three big men, majority leader, minority leader, and the speaker, to agree on the text, so who were leaving. So that is how I understood the situation to be. Only to get to the floor, and you know, the NDC side, for whatever reason, they were absent. So we carried on with the business of the day. The following day, they came in. We had intel from their side that they were going to do, you know, they were going to go physical. Let me put it that way bluntly. They moved the motion. Honorable Chairman Sabonzu raised a preliminary objection, rose on a point of order. And this is where I want to correct them. You see, Honorable Chairman Sabonzu's point of order arrested in principle the motion that was moved by Harun Idrisu. So Mr. Speaker ruled on the point of order. So they shouldn't get it wrong by saying that because Mr. Speaker heard them. It's a House of Parliament. You must be heard. So Mr. Speaker listened to the point of order, took note, allowed the full discussion, and then said he is ruling on the point of order. So you've said all that you want to say. Like our court, you go with your case, somebody will raise a preliminary objection. Supreme Court will tell you that, well, incorporate it, make your argument. But at the end of the day, it happens all the time. You will say all that you want to say, but the court will come and say the preliminary objection has been upheld. And that kills the whole matter. That is what happened in Parliament. But, Samson, people are talking about parliamentarians embarrassing themselves and all that. I would urge the public to strongly, especially you, the media, call individuals out. Look, I am really tired of the verbal abuse. They've been abusing us all the time. Insults, the NDC side, get the tapes. And they know that day, Joe Osewusu, insult upon insult. We'll be quiet and watching them. When he was about ruling, they rehearsed. I saw them. I've been in the chamber. I know movement. People change positions. Some people walked out. And you see, some people have made themselves gentle souls, but they are the most poisonous. They will incite and pretend that they are calming. I won't mention their names. They know themselves. And if you, the media, you pay attention to movement and the posture, you know that those are the real evil beings in the chamber. Because you go and incite another member of parliament, go and beat somebody, then you walk out of the chamber as if you are an angel. You are not an angel. Your situation is even worse, and we know them. You see, that day, my colleague from Ashama, we knew they wanted to attack. They thought Joe Osewusu was adjourning. So they took position. So they were supposed to beat him. He was going to take the other direction. But God being so good, he suspended sitting. So they couldn't get access to him. He left. The next strategy was to get the maize out. We won't show WhatsApp messages and text messages out of respect to them. But very soon they will be exposed. So Marshall got wind of it and came to protect the maize. They were supposed to also take the chair. Eventually, the Ashama MP, you remember, he did the same thing to Eslawusu. He has been stationed to do that. He is a hatchet man. When there is nonsense, will be nominated to execute the nonsense. Sometimes I sit in the chamber afraid of my own life. I fear for my life. Because smallest thing we are debating, then you threaten someone, I'll beat you. I'll beat you. Really? You should call them out. Some judge is saying he's apologizing on behalf of the minority and majority. We don't need you to apologize on our behalf. Some, with respect, apologize on behalf of your caucus. MPP, with respect, has been gentle enough. Let us debate, have a lively debate. When we finish, let's get to the coffee area, have our kenke, have our coffee, laugh, drink, have fun. That is politics. But you come to physically abuse your colleague, deputy majority leader. I'm holding a press conference. A colleague, a lawyer, comes to snatch my press paper, my press release from my hand, my document from my hand. Is that politics? We can't continue with that part. That one, unacceptable. So that point must be well registered that we are against that machoism, that hooliganism. You may disagree. Go on and raise issues. That is the beauty of democracy. And debating in the floor and disagreeing with respect is part of our bona fides. That is well known in all parliamentary democracy. You don't go physical. Watch all the tapes. Which group advanced to the center? They were coming to our side. And somebody will be pretending to be stopping. Anyway, let's move on. It's up to them. I'll come to the issue of the 20-man committee headed by me. Yes, we've agreed to de-escalate. Some elders in the chamber, senior members, were of the view that, look, these things should not happen. I'm happy our colleagues on the other side obliged that, this position. We've had 2 meetings. It's been well. I think gradually members are getting to appreciate that position, that we don't need to go physical and all that. If per the approach, we all appreciate that the best way is to arm yourself with your standing orders, get your constitution, and go by the rules of the House. It will help our democracy. When we were in opposition, something you know, anytime we disagreed on the House floor and Mr. Speaker ruled against us, we went to the Supreme Court. Today, I see people referring to some of the decisions. I remember Kojo Gadra. Yeah, the NDC was referring to it. Many of them. The EC case, we know MPP will go to Supreme Court, will not come and pick the maize, will not come and take Mr. Speaker's chair, will not insult Mr. Speaker. Go and check the record whether we verbally ever abused Do Ajawo or whether we verbally abused Bamfordado, the former Justice of the Supreme Court who became the Speaker under Atta Mills. But check the records, you will see, even with my respected colleague, Honorable Aaron Edrisu, verbally abusing Michael Quay. It's there. The insult, you have the tapes. We will not verbally abuse Mr. Speaker. We disagree with me, we express it. But on their side, look at what they did to Joe Osewusu. So such a thing should never happen. Going forward, the budget has been approved. They themselves, currently, if they will be fair, they have no leadership. The NDC as it stands in Parliament today, because leader speaks, backbencher says no. That day, that Friday that we were having meeting with Mr. Speaker, my colleague Sam George held a press conference to say that the majority side was refusing to come to the chamber. Meanwhile, we were at a meeting at the inside of Mr. Speaker with his own side. Yet he held a press conference that we didn't want to sit. You see? So I think that the NDC should put its house in order. We know what is happening in their caucus. Because even the 20-man committee the 10, they know that some other group said they don't agree. Why were they not selected? Harun Idrisu speaking for their side, and in fact, they had their proposal. They came to the meeting, written proposal. We had Kofi Ato in the meeting. Now they say that, oh, they have not authorized him to speak. Why? So they have a problem. They have leadership crisis, or some hawks are taking over their party, some external interest, you know, making life difficult for us. And at the end of the day, they would, you know, they will visit their displeasure on us. They will come and think that we should take responsibility for their own instability in their backyard. They should put their house in order. Let us have a sincere conversation and move on as a country. Now let me address an important matter of quorum. I am surprised that the NDC is now defining quorum to mean if you are unavoidably absent from the chamber, you can still be counted. Really? Then what was the basis for the deputy minority whip's application on quorum? When clearly members were at committee, then he said they were not physically present. The rule provides that when a member raises quorum, there has to be a head count. The bell must be rung to get people to come into the chamber, and you must be physically present. At the time that they were taking their decision, did we have more than 137 physically present? And in fact, there were two stage motions, applications. One was the prayer by finance minister. We left at that point. We didn't ask for a head count. What Mr. Speaker did was a head count. There's a difference between a head count and a division. My application was specific. I applied for a division. The application was upheld. So technically speaking, even if we're absent, even if we had left, Mr. Speaker couldn't have varied it to do head count. That in itself was wrong. There was no division. So some judge cannot tell us that we came in and we left. At the time we left, there was a decision on the first prayer. Then when we were not there at all, they went ahead to do a second question. They put a second question and then they carried it. No, that is never the case. Quorum means physically present and taking a decision. So they need to get that clear. On the issue of 1042, Article 1042 or the 1082 and 3, you see, something you and I know, when the same language is not repeated, they cannot mean the same. If you are talking about 1082, talking about Mr. Speaker not having original vote nor a casting vote, but you get to 1083 and they're saying a deputy speaker will not retain his original vote. You can't tell me that 1082 and 3 read together will mean one and the same. Never. I disagree with respect. So as for that debate, it will go on and on and on. But we are a parliament.
Did you say you're speaking to me? You disagree with me?
No, I'm saying that I disagree with the position they have taken, not you.
Thank you.
No, with respect, sir. No, if I said so unavoidably, okay, then I'm That's sorry. Okay. I'm saying that the position that they have taken, that 1082, 1083 are one and the same, I beg to say it is not correct.
Okay.
We have moved past that. Now the budget has passed. We are supposed to look at the estimates. All disagreements on the estimates can be discussed at the committee level. We can escalate it to the plenary when the report comes. We know their position. Their position is 1%. I am surprised suddenly they want to steam Harun Idrisu, or that they want to, and single him out and sacrifice him. That was the position by the collective. If they have changed their position, I will be surprised. But let Ghanaians know that on the E level, the NDC agrees with the MPP that we need that E levy. We share that political risk together. They shouldn't resolve, backtrack, and suddenly create the impression that we are in this alone. They, as a political party, have said that e-levy is a necessary evil. We must have e-levy. Where we disagree is the percentage. They want 1%. Government says 1.75. Government has assured them that it is going to take steps to look into the concerns and make an announcement to that effect. So that is where we are. MPP, NDC as the two main political actors in this country in charge of the governance of this country agreed to e-levy. Simplicity. And this was well echoed by their group and eventually by Harun Idrisu, their minority leader, not only once, but twice. Tuesday evening after the decision was taken by us, they held a press conference and re-echoed that position that they are for the e-levy, but no more than 1%. Yesterday, Friday, we heard him again. So I'm surprised that suddenly they want to make a U-turn. I mean, people will not respect them. If you're a politician, you want to eat your cake and have it, please. It doesn't operate that way. NDC as a party, NDC as a minority in parliament, you support e-levy. We disagree on percentage. That is why we've been engaging each other. Let's move along that line. Don't deceive Ghanaians that you don't support e-levy. You support e-levy. The video of your minority leader is out there. They have to play it, and we will not accept any last-minute political U-turn.
Okay.
I rest my case, sir.
Thank you very much. So, if you have watched, I have deliberately allowed something to go on. So you would watch Sam George spoke until he got tired. I'm sure that it's also tired. Now I need to pick up a few things with you before I go to Dr. Andrew. I suspect sometimes, when you're speaking in the heat of things, you may use certain expressions and words that you don't intend. So let me ask and be sure if you meant things like some of them are the evil beings in the chamber. You said some of them, these MPs, they are the evil beings in the chamber.
Boss, for want of a better word, if you incite another colleague to hurt another person, obviously it amounts to evil. Because this Ashama MP, I want people to watch the tape. His actions moved towards the maze, went to remove the chair. Proud to that. The videos are there. Proud to that. There was some movement where he sat. That was not his sitting position. So I am saying that all those other MPs who quietly incite others to do that, their faces will not show. They are the real evil guys in the chamber. They are destroying the image of Parliament. I've not mentioned their names out of respect for them, but I know them. People know them. It's not good, Samson. What is happening is not good.
Okay, so
somebody has been elected. You have been elected. You go and tell him, go and beat somebody. Go and assault. Go and remove the chair.
I got my clarity. Now, this other thing you said, and I've heard you repeat that about the speaker, and you say that in the meeting with the speaker, not in the chamber. So we all are not privy to what you say the speaker says. That the speaker mentions this guy and says because this guy is insulting him, he will make...
So let me repeat it. Let me clarify.
As difficult.
No, not business difficult. We were in Mr. Speaker's office as leadership, trying to fine-tune the best way to manage the floor for that afternoon. In the process, Mr. Speaker said, Kevin Taylor, there is a video that Kevin Taylor is insulting him, that he was supporting government to pass its budget. And his own people were insulting him. These were his words. So he suddenly gave up on the engagement, that he was going to rope and get into the chamber.
You're saying?
Yes.
Because Babing is not here to speak for himself, or I'm sure Sam George will not have been part of that meeting.
No, he was not in.
He's not part of the leaders.
He was not in the chamber.
Yeah, you're saying that Babing, who has done over 2 decades as a politician and being at the very important place of parliament, and now has become the whole speaker of this proud Ghana's parliament, makes the fear of insults by an irrelevant, an insulting ignoramus, so to speak, whose tabloid of jokes he does in the name of journalism, he makes that a major issue, and because of that, he's unable to proceed with an important, business of the House. I doubt that Bagbin, with all these decades of, politics and experience, would be concerned about such a character who is involved in jokes in the name of journalism. Respectfully.
Samson, you've known me. I may make mistakes as a politician. I may misquote and all that. But on this occasion, please take my words. Mr. Speaker and I are very close. When we're backbenchers, we go to him for advice and all that. I am telling you that these were his words. Mr. Speaker said Kevin Taylor was insulting him in a video, and he gave up because we're still having a meeting in his office. Okay. I am saying so, and Mr. Speaker knows I'm telling the truth. He said his people were insulting him. They've reported him to Kevin Taylor, and there's a video, he's insulting him. These were his words. Why? What would I gain?
Okay. I've got a number of questions for you.
What would I gain?
I'll come back to it.
He gave up.
I'll come back to it. Where you talk about verbal abuse by particularly NDC MPs, and then you also suggest that these NDC MPs, even though are individuals that you won't ask journalists to name them, you say their conduct is simply executing the corporate decision of the whole NDC. I doubt if it is the same cannot be said about your members who also were engaged in acts of vandalism. But hold it there briefly for me, like I said. Let's go to Dr. Andrew A.J. Holmes, economist and research fellow, ISE. As an economist, sitting back, reviewing the budget, dealing with the cold figures, and looking at the future and, people's economy and the rest of it, how do you follow what has been going on in Parliament? How do you follow that? Just give us your general view and perhaps maybe something briefly about the e-levy and where they seem to disagree on it. And then we will take a break and return to zoom in on the specific issues, questions of the quorum, the constitutionality or illegality of the Friday events and the Tuesday process as well. Please unmute your microphone.
Thank you very much, Samson, and a very good morning to your listeners. Let me also take this advantage to extend Ghana's appreciation to our farmers and fishermen. In the context of COVID, we see that the agricultural sector is the only one which grew. That must send some signals that our farmers are doing some great job.
Great.
So we appreciate their effort. And coming to the budget and everything that surrounds it in the last 2 weeks or so, what I would say is that last weekend, people in my fraternity or people in our research group were quite concerned that we were possibly reviewing a budget that has been rejected, and then fast forward, the same budget is accepted. So there was some level of confusion as to whether we were reviewing a legal document. Nevertheless, we did also see 1 or 2 releases from the 2 political parties, which suggested that in total, it's not the entire budget which has been rejected. There are certain aspects, and even the parts which people did not quite agree on, it should encourage us to wade into the debate and provide some suggestions where possible. in my honest opinion, and I've said it this in October, that in 2022 to about 2024, it's not going to be very easy for Ghana as a country. And some time ago, I thought that we were just going to get by. And I say this for 3 reasons. You know, poverty is rife, and there is significant level of social exclusion. And we see these occurrences being amplified by 2 important things which have happened, which we had no idea were going to happen. First is the COVID-19, and we were also getting out of financial sector cleanup, which cost us so much and also cost people their jobs. We also are aware that some of the growth we've seen in the decade or so has primarily been jobless. It has not created the required jobs that we urgently need. And in fact, some of the statistics coming out of the Ghana Statistical Service suggest that nearly every 12 out of 100 adults in Ghana do not have jobs. And this problem is even so pronounced for young people between 15 and 24, where we find 1 in 4 of people who have no jobs. So that is concerning. At the same time, we find that those who have jobs, they are in jobs which are quite precarious. They are the people who are selling in traffic, trades which are not certain. One day you have a job, tomorrow you do not have a job. And this is happening in an environment where incomes for those who have jobs are also, to a large extent, shrinking. And this calls into question our preparedness to address the provisions or the requirements of the Sustainable Development Goals, which suggests that we need to create decent jobs for our people. Have we been able to do that? We doubt. The jobs that are coming out for people to partake in are pretty much not very decent, and they do not guarantee some form of sustainability for the households. At the same time, we see a bigger picture where the government, who has the responsibility of providing the policy direction and making sure that some of the challenges are tackled, is also burdened with an all-important constraint of excessive debt, inching towards unsustainable levels. Today, our debt to GDP is nearly 8 out of 10 of every product that we are able to bring onto the market. That is quite compelling. And remember that this has increased from a level of about 54% to the current level of nearly 78%. Very concerning, and it brings to the fore that we definitely need to find ways to pay these debts or finance our activities by ourselves. Having said that, it might also interest you to know that all the effort that is put in by Reverend Amishadai and his team at the GRA, whatever they rake in, we spend almost 60% paying our debt interest. And that is quite compelling. Why should we send Mr. Amishadai and his people out to collect money only to pay debt? This calls for new ways of doing things. And when you have to do new things or new ways, when you want to adopt new ways of doing things, there are 2 important things you have to bear in mind. First, have you thought about the innovation very carefully and understood the implications of that innovations for the economic actors? The second point is, you should also bear in mind that once such an innovation, whether in the financial sector or wherever, happens, people or the participants in the market are going to react. So these are things we believe that we need to think about carefully as we expand our plans to widen the tax net and bring in more revenue to the coffers of government.
Yeah, use these to examine the e-levy.
Good. So, and pretty much so, we see government come out with something new, which we call the e-levy or the electronic transaction levy. I would say that this e-levy falls into a group of taxes which we call financial taxes or financial sector taxes. And usually what we do with those taxes is to ensure that there is stability in the sector. So if people are buying bonds, buying futures, etc., some taxation is introduced to ensure that it's not overdone to prevent some instability in the system. So economists disagree on whether this should be done or not. Some feel that once you introduce such taxes, it rather impedes a well-working system and makes it unable to achieve what it ought to achieve.
Yeah. What do you say from Issa? What do you say about this e-levy?
So we think that there are going to be significant implications on the households and on businesses. But the first question we ask here is whether we are unhappy about people using the MOMO or the forms of e-transactions that we identify to apply this tax. The other point we make is that because there are other ways to do the transaction, we are going to see people move away from these e-transactions which are going to attract the levy.
Do you share the minority's view?
So I'll come to that. First, we know that people can pay with checks, people can pay with cash, and people can also do internet banking to transfer resources. So the question is, why are we singling out the MOMO transactions by people who are just working with the MOMO? That ought to be understood. That ought to be explained well, because once a tax handle is discriminatory, it is not efficient. When a tax handle fails to show that they are not unnecessarily targeting a group of taxpayers, it doesn't make it efficient. So these canons of taxation should be borne in mind, that as you think about taxing, you shouldn't give other people the leeway of not paying. And what we've seen is that at the initial stages, you may assume that you are going to actually tax people who are transferring so much money on the platform. But mind you, the people who can transfer so much money, they are also the people who can easily move from the MOMO and begin to use checks or e-transactions as in internet banking.
Yeah, so should it be maintained or not, or what should be done with it?
I think if it ought to be maintained, which it can also be explained in, if it ought to be maintained, then we think that it has to be done in a more innovative way. First, the e-levy does not tell us, the e-levy does not suggest that we are charging consumption or we are charging production, nothing of that sort. So what we think is that there are existing taxes which we can explore. There's a first one on a gift tax, and there's also another on income tax. When people transfer money on MOMO, etc., we know that they are either using it as a gift or to pay people. Of course, there may be other reasons. So if they are paying, if they are receiving incomes, then the tax law allows us to tax those incomes. If they are transferring gifts, then the tax law also allows us to tax those gifts. So how do we take advantage of this big platform to get the right database, hand it over to the GRA, so that invoices can be sent to people who either declare the transfers that come to them as gifts or as income. Those are nuanced approaches which may sound difficult.
How is it difficult? Yeah, I was going to ask a question. How is this possible?
It is possible. We now have everybody's Ghana card being turned into the tax identification number.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the class of the category of transaction. How is it possible using Momo transaction to know that this is for a gift or this is to pay for something and for which a tax must be levied on?
There's something we are already not doing and which we must start doing. The tax law demands that everybody files their taxes monthly when it comes to gifts. Are we doing that? Is the GRA taking steps to make sure people do?
Okay.
I don't know. Second, the tax laws also entrenches us or makes us responsible for filing our income tax either at the end of the year or if it's being filed by your firm, then at the end of every month, that ought to be declared. So as we take advantage of the digitalization, it will be critical that we pay more attention to what we can do to make the tax administration fair. Mind you, the gift tax is nearly 25%, and that would apply to everybody. It doesn't discriminate that I am sending money via Momo and someone else is sending money via bank account. So that is the first thing we think we should do.
Okay.
If we feel that we must go ahead anyway, then we need to broaden that tax to include people who will withdraw money from the ATMs, include people who would send money via internet banking, etc. But that would also create some disturbances in the financial system and cause people who were formerly not interested in the banking system and have come on board to withdraw their money and stay out. So we need to think about it more carefully and see what we can do in a more nuanced way before going forward.
Okay. I needed you to be categorical and maybe in 1 minute on this for us so that you may take leave of us. We come back and deal with our politics and legalese. The e-levy, where does ISA stand on what is best for Ghana? Do we need it? Do we not need it? You are saying if it ought to be maintained. Should it be maintained? Shouldn't it? And why?
We need money, and so we need ways to do it. But it must be done fairly.
I see. It must be done fairly.
Yes.
And the fair means will be?
We should include other e-transactions. Otherwise, it would seem as though we are simply targeting Momo users.
And that is wrong, to target Momo users.
Yes, as I mentioned, one of the canons of taxation is that the tax handler must be fair. It must not be seen to be targeting a group of people and leaving out others. Once that happens, those who have the ability to substitute the approach, and which people will do because there are other means, they will, and eventually we may not even realize the 6.9 billion we plan to. And it has been shown in other countries, especially Uganda, that 25% of the taxpayers who were on the e-transaction platforms actually left. And that has implications on the jobs created by the telecoms. So if our objective is to ensure that people have jobs, and we are going to cut into a platform which is growing and creating the necessary jobs, then we need to take a second look. The rate is also quite punitive. And as I'm saying, people are saying we should increase the base. Eventually, those who have the ability to switch, they are the rich people. And you will end up taxing the poorer users of the platform. So in the
Okay.
short run, yes, we may get money. As people adjust and take new platforms, we will lose the potential resources that we planned for.
Kwame Pienin, the economist, says that it should be scrapped. He says this is not time for jerky maneuvers. He says the e-levy is anti-technology progress and may undermine the significant progress being achieved in the financial inclusion for the unbanked. You don't agree with him?
There's always that it's also an easy way to say that nothing should be done. But there are, and of course, very respected economists, etc. Yes, there could be challenges which will come with it, but we can also sit down and engineer it in a way that it does not unduly compromise the achievements made in the digitalization processes.
Okay. Thank you so very much, Dr. Andrew J. Holmes. He's economist and research fellow at ISE, Institute of Social Economics Research. Thank you so very much. We'll take a break. I return with your politicians, the MPs, and then the lawyer, also civil society activists, and Kokubako here in the studio. We'll be right back.